Hi, this is Alex with Maple Leaf Coffee Roasters in Roselle. I'm here today to talk about our January 2026 Club Coffee, a fun honey processed coffee from Thailand. Check it out. So just as a reminder, our Coffee Club program is a coffee of the month sort of system where I bring in members only coffee every month, roasted a couple different ways, and provide members a full readout of the coffee itself, all the flavors, make some suggestions. It is a fun program for people who are looking to explore some of the different types of coffees that are out there. These are coffees that I bring in only for club members, and they're always something a little bit different, something that I wouldn't normally feature as a regular option on our shelf. If you are interested in joining this program, there is a wait list for it. Please feel free to shoot me a message or an email, and I will happily add you to that wait list so that you can get signed up when there is an open spot. So last month in December, we featured a coffee from Thailand, and this month we also have another coffee from Thailand, different source, but still another fun coffee. It is a different coffee in that it is a honey processed coffee from Thailand. We have had a coffee from Thailand in the club many years ago, as I mentioned last month in that video, and they are a fun mix of different flavors that you would normally see out of some Central American coffees, specifically a Guatemalan coffee, particularly for my tastes, and also some characteristics that you sometimes see out of coffees from Asia Pacific. Having a honey processed coffee from Thailand also adds an extra level, extra nuance to it. As a reminder for the different processing methods that are out there, the honey process is sort of an intermediary between a natural and a wash process, where they do a partial drying of the coffee in the cherry and then send it through what is effectively a wash process. So you gain some of the benefits of a natural processed coffee, the kind of nuanced flavor, the extra level, the extra character, sometimes a bit more of a fruitiness to it, but you also maintain some of the consistency and the lower acidity that a wash processed coffee will deliver. So whenever I do get a chance to get a honey processed coffee, either in the club or on the regular shelves, it is something that I jump at because it is a fun differentiator for any coffee, especially the ones that I've had on the shelf that are coffees that I've had from a similar origin before. Very similar, we had a Costa Rican honey processed coffee a couple months ago. That was a fun mix on the normal conventional Costa Rican flavor profile because of that honey process. This month, we didn't do anything super out of the ordinary for this coffee. As far as the roast process goes, this actually took a little bit less time in the development phase. And that development phase as a percentage of the overall roast time is something that I do keep an eye on, not only for the sample roast, but also when I transition it into the larger machine that we use to roast the club coffees, to try to maintain a certain level of consistency between the roasted sample and the actual production coffee that gets put out to our club members. This month, the development phase for all three levels was shorter than what we normally would do for any of the coffees. And the reason that I wanted to do it that way was to give this coffee a bit more of an edge to it, something that had a little bit more, not in a negative sense, but something a little bit more of a twist to it, to try to get some of the kind of brighter highlights that this coffee will offer. And I do think that resulted this month in a little bit more of a higher acidity coffee than normal. And I think that that is a fun opportunity for club members to get some of the harder edge notes that a coffee from Thailand will offer. So just be aware, if you normally pick something that is darker because you don't want a little bit of a bite to the coffee, I'd say try to go for the dark roast this month. As a result, it will have a little bit more of an edge to it than you normally used to seeing. So normal, light, medium, and dark roast this month. Let's start off with the light roast coffee. This month on the light roast side of things, there is a fun kind of tiny bit of a tropical fruit flavor to this. It's not super strong. It's definitely subtle and not quite in the background, but not quite in your face. Very light and rich kind of scent from the grounds themselves. Very mildly tart kind of coffee. So this isn't quite an African coffee acidity level, but if you're a person that normally goes away from a light roast coffee because of that acidity level, you'll want to avoid the light roast coffee this month. Slightly sour kind of taste to it, and fun element for all three coffees this month is there is a kind of like a dry finish to this coffee too. So similar flavor set in some ways to the roast from Thailand that we had last month, but a little bit more of a bite, a little bit more of a citrusy edge, especially for the light roast this month. Moving on to the medium roast profile, again, shorter development time for this coffee, so a little bit of a sweeter edge to it, a little bit more of a bite. Not quite as sour as that light roast coffee that I just talked about. Moved more into a caramel, a little bit of a spice, honey kind of flavor. This is where I saw the most similarities between this coffee and the Guatemalan flavor profile that we've seen before, or even a Honduran coffee flavor profile that had that sweetness to it that you could sort of see from a Honduran or a Guatemalan coffee. A little bit of a vanilla chocolate kind of tint to this. When we get to the dark roast, we'll talk a little bit more about the kind of chocolatey flavors coming out of this coffee. But this one had a little bit of a dark chocolate flavor to it that kind of balanced out quite curiously with a little bit of a touch of a bitter note. One thing I like to remind people of with bitter notes in coffee is that it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing or doesn't make it a bad roast. A bitter flavor in coffee is not dissimilar from a bitter flavor in chocolate. A lot of times people forget that a dark chocolate has a bitter flavor, and that's kind of what the signature flavor of a really good dark chocolate will have, is a touch of a bitterness to it that I think pairs quite interestingly with the little bit of the sour, acidic kind of flavor that you get. So if you're a person that normally goes for the medium roast coffees and you want to try something a little bit different this month, I say stick with the medium. It's going to be a fun adventure to see kind of what a little bit more of a dark chocolate flavor in a medium roast coffee will bring. That also pairs quite nicely with that sort of tiny bit of bite that we don't normally see out of a medium roast coffee as well. Onto the dark roast coffee this month. This is pretty much what you would expect in a lot of ways for a dark roast coffee. A richer, more robust taste, something that has a little bit more heft to it, but much like the medium and the light, still has that dry finish, which is kind of nice. Honestly, when a coffee has a dry finish, it is something that maybe you might not like every day, but every once in a while, you don't want a coffee to really linger with you. You kind of want to leave it after you swallow to have a little bit of like a quick finish, not quite like a crisp finish like we see out of coffees from islands like Jamaica or Hawaiian coffees that we have. But when it does finish and you swallow it, it still lingers there, but in a different way from that dryness, not quite like drinking a dry wine, but maybe not too far from that. Had that kind of dark chocolate edge that we saw from the medium roast as well. That bitter flavor did come out a little bit more here, but once again, that's not a bad bitter. It's not like a burned or dark or oily kind of bitter. This is a pleasant kind of baker's chocolate, cocoa powder sort of dark roast that has that cool dry finish and the subtlety to it that you don't normally see out of some of the nuance, kind of nuanced flavor that we get in a honey processed coffee compared to, say, a washed coffee as well. Fun dark roast this month. I think wasn't a super dark roast by my standards, but on the darker end of things. Not a super long development time either. Like I said, a lot of times the darker roast profiles for me, the ones that I really push, they'll have a development time that's probably about like a minute longer than what this one was. And we kind of moved this one pretty quickly into that dark roast profile. So it did retain a decent amount of flavor, but you still get that kind of rich roasty feel that we, a lot of times the dark roast drinkers really enjoy. So we're looking forward to all the club members getting this coffee in their hands this month. And like I said, if you're interested in joining the club, make sure to reach out, drop an email, and I'll add you to the wait list. And until next month, we'll catch you next time for another great Club Coffee video. Take care.